Hey everybody, this is Dr. Chris Dost. In this video, we're going to be looking at Exodus 3:4 in the Masoretic text, and we'll also pay attention to the Dead Sea Scrolls. All right, let's get started. Okay, so Exodus 3:4 reads, Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasnei, vayomer, Moshe Moshe, vayomer, hineni. Let's read it slower now. Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, Vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasne, vayomer Moshe Moshe, vayomer hineni. And one more time fast. Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasne, vayomer Moshe Moshe, vayomer hineni. So the first word of the verse is vayar, vayar. This is a third masculine singular, vav consecutive, in the call stem. Third masculine singular, vav consecutive in the call stem. And we know it's third masculine singular because it has a yud prefix and no suffix. And so that's a sign of the third masculine singular. Now remember that the vav consecutive, especially in final hey verbs, is going to be apocopated. Apocopated. That means that the ending is going to be chopped off. And so you'll see in the paradigms that the prefix conjugation, third masculine singular in the call, will be yireh. It has the yud prefix plus the resh, followed by aleph and hey. So the three root letters, resh, aleph, hey, are all there. You can see that in this form. So in Genesis 22:8, we have Vayomer Avraham, Elohim yireh lo. God will see to it. He will see. Yireh is a third masculine singular prefix conjugation. Consecutive, like we see in Exodus 3:4, is vayara. That's an apocopated form. The hey has dropped off. It's been chopped off of the ending, so to speak. All right, so vayar Adonai, the Lord saw. The Lord saw. So verbs of perception are often followed by ki, which means that. It's kind of like haughty in Greek. Vayar Adonai ki. Now the Lord saw that. The Lord saw that. Sar lirot. Sar is a third masculine singular suffix conjugation verb in the call stem. Third masculine singular suffix conjugation in the call stem. And it means he turned aside. So, Vayar Adonai ki sar, and the Lord saw that he turned aside, and then that's followed by an infinitive construct, lirot, to see. Lirot is the preposition le, plus the call infinitive construct of the verb ra'ah. So final hey verbs, oftentimes in the infinitive construct, will get an ot ending, lirot, to see. Notice that the preposition le has a hirik under it. It has an I vowel, a short I vowel. And that's because when you have a schwa followed by another schwa, which would be the expected forms in this case, at least if they were isolated, the first schwa will become a hirik. Then the Lord saw that Moses turned aside to see. Vayikra elav. Vayikra is a third masculine singular vav consecutive of the call stem, third masculine singular vav consecutive call of the root kuf resh aleph. And this will mean, and he called. Notice that this form is not apocopated, unlike the final hey verb, ra'ah, which becomes vayara. Vayikra elav, this is the preposition el plus the third masculine singular pronominal suffix, to him. Elav, and the yud is not pronounced. Vayikra elav Elohim. Elohim is the subject, so we have verb prepositional phrase followed by the subject. And he called to him, mitoch, from the midst of, mitoch, hasne, the bush. And so sne is the noun. This is the lexical form that you see. And the definite article has all three expected features, the hey, the patach, and the dagesh inside the samech. Hasne, mitoch hasne, mitoch hasne. Then we have vayomer, Moshe, Moshe. Vayomer, Vayomer is a vav consecutive third masculine singular suffix conjugation. Vav consecutive third masculine singular suffix conjugation, which again is not apocryphated because it ends in resh, not in he. So Vayomer, and he said, Moshe, 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 Moses, Moses. And then Moses responds, Vayomer Hineni, Vayomer Hineni. And he said, if you want to be super wooden, behold me, but we'll translate it, here I am. And this is hine plus the first common singular pronominal suffix, hineni. Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasnei, vayomer, Moshe Moshe, vayomer, hineni. Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasnei, vayomer, Moshe Moshe, vayomer, hineni. All right, so I just want to review the accents that we see in this verse, and so I'm not going to do them in order. I want to do them more in terms of priority. So first, on the final word of the verse, hineni, we have the siluk accent, which can also be referred to as sof pasuk, but generally we don't call it sof pasuk only because we want to distinguish the cantillation mark or the accent mark itself from the two sof pasuk dots. And so the siluk is the vertical stroke underneath the final word of the verse. And that is a disjunctive accent. It's an accent of separation. Next, we have the atnach, which usually when I'm teaching a beginner's course, I'll say, okay, this occurs at the halfway point of the verse. Now, in terms of words, no, you can't just count the words and assume that an atnach is going to show up. But in terms of sense, the halfway point of the verse in terms of sense, then yes, that's often where the atnach falls. But it is kind of the middle point of the verse. You can assume when you see an atnach, a lot of times there will be, in the English translation, a comma, a semicolon, maybe a period, some kind of punctuation mark. But usually there is a break in thought. So when we look at Exodus 3:4, notice where the atnach shows up. It shows up under the word lirot. Vayar Adonai ki sar lirot, and the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, or to have a look, if we're not being too wooden here. And then something new happens. Vayikra elav Elohim, and God called to him. And so it's a logical place for a division. And so where the atnach falls happens to be a place where there is a syntactic division. It occurs at the end of a clause. And so you'll notice that most English translations will have some kind of punctuation after the translation for lirot. All right, now another disjunctive accent that we see a couple of times in this verse is the tifcha. And that occurs on Adonai, the second word of the verse, Vayar Adonai, and it occurs on the second instance of Moshe. Now you'll notice that in both places where that disjunctive accent, tifcha, occurs, it closes out a phrase once again. The first one is Vayar Adonai, and the Lord said. The Lord said what? The Lord said that, and so there's a subordinate clause that follows. So when the tifcha occurs on Adonai, there is actually a syntactic break here. And where it occurs on the second instance of Moshe, Moshe, a period belongs there. And so this disjunctive accent actually occurs at a place of syntactic division. That is to say, where a clause ends. So notice that both instances of tifcha are preceded by mercha. And so mercha is a conjunctive accent. It's conjoining the word that it falls on to the following word. So we see twice in this verse the combination of mercha, the conjunctive accent mercha, followed by tifcha. And when we see that, we know when we're translating that we can join those words together, that they're somehow joined together in sense. And so we see that this combination of mercha followed by tifcha occurs all over the Hebrew Bible. We see this in Genesis 1:3, Vayomer Elohim, and God said. And notice that there's